Okay, what if the secret to scaling your business wasn't more hustle, but it was more curiosity? Jon Bassford has built his career by asking better questions and helping businesses thrive because of it. In this episode of Profit with a Plan, Jon shares how curiosity leadership can transform operations, fuel innovation, and eliminate roadblocks that hold businesses back. So some of the key takeaways we're going to talk about today are how to get curiosity or curious about your operations and drive serious growth, the power of curiosity culture and why it matters for your team, and the common operational pitfalls and how to avoid them before they stall your success. So tune in today and learn how to turn curiosity into your competitive edge. Hey, entrepreneurs, are you working too hard for too little profit? Well, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast, where we help you scale smarter, increase profitability, and build a business that's worth more, whether you keep it or sell it. I'm Marcia Riner, business growth strategist and the profit booster behind Infinite Profit. I've helped countless entrepreneurs to turn their businesses into highly profitable and sale ready assets so they enjoy more income now and a bigger payout later on. So join me for practical strategies, expert insights, and proven steps to make your business more profitable, more valuable, and built to last. By the way, today's episode is sponsored by Infinite Profit, where we don't just talk profit, we deliver it. But before we dive in, I've got something super special for you. And I'm getting the impression from my audience that you're feeling like you're doing everything right, but you're still not seeing the results you might want. Well, it might be time for a fresh perspective. And that's why we're offering a free growth and marketing audit. And in just one powerful session, we'll uncover opportunities to drive real growth in your business. So if you're ready to make an impact, visit profitbooster.biz and let's get started. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Our guest today is Jon Bassford. Jon is an operations professional and an entrepreneur driven by his curiosity. Curiosity is his superpower, and it has driven his personal and professional advancement. After law school, Jon put this curiosity to work launching, managing, and improving operations for venture-backed startups to global nonprofits with impact. For Jon, there's nothing that curiosity can't help. Today, Jon is known for his curiosity-driven leadership, helping organizations and individuals innovate, change, and grow through the adoption of curiosity as their superpower. Jon is also a best-selling author and TEDx speaker. Jon, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, curiosity is a strange superpower for a lawyer, right? Where in the heck did that come in?
It actually has come up twice in my life, and I finally, the second time, I leaned into it. So, like with most people, when I was, making a career shift, I started reaching out my network, and someone introduced me to a colleague of theirs who helps people to define their superpower. And
Hmm.
after some interviews and some forums, back and forth, he came back with curiosity as mine. And at the time, I didn't do a whole lot with it, but then, 2 years ago, I was working with a branding company, just kind of taking things to the next level, and it came up again in a kind of VIP session with the owner. And so I really started thinking about curiosity and really, even as a kid, being that kid who sat around and spoke with adults and asked questions and was inquisitive about, life and history and things. And then my career, being that person who just didn't accept the status quo, but would constantly question what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And so really looking back, it's always been there, but I didn't, and I can see it, but it's been a more recent discovery.
I love it. The evolution of who we are. Oftentimes we look in the mirror and we see this person, right? And then we go find this expert or mentor or guidance counselor or coach that can see something that we don't see because it's this like back halo floating around us. But that's really interesting that it came out. So what happened to your law career?
So after law school, I actually ended up falling into working for a legal organization as a member of law school. And so I ended up launching a career initially in association management, nonprofit associations, which then led me into working for an association that was a startup that worked with startups. And so I kind of this
Oh,
double
interesting.
immersion in the startup world. And then when I switched to consulting, I had some former bosses that were launching either new nonprofits or new for-profits and needed help launching operations. And I did that and then stayed on as a fractional COO. So that's how I started my consulting career.
I love it. I love it. So, operations, I mean, you and I both know it's incredibly important to have that strength inside of your company. And rather than, flying by the seat of your pants, which many of these startups or younger companies tend to react their way through every day. So, when we look at curiosity and we look at our operational structure, how does that really play into improving that?
Sure. So yeah, I think when we're not focusing on operations, several things happen. One is the lack of efficiency. How quickly are we getting things done, right? From onboarding employees to how you run your accounts payable to how your team communicates. When you don't have an eye on your operations, just things become inefficient, right? There's bottlenecks, there's cogs in the wheel, whatever analogy you want to use for that. So that's an important part of it. But also is the result side, right? Is it achieving the results in the best way possible? And when you don't have those two things going on within your organization, what tends to happen is the CEOs, the owners, the C-suite get pulled down into areas that they have no business working in, but because problems keep happening and things aren't working well, and then so not only are you spending too much time down here and spending too much time and money down here, it also is pulling you away from the things that really do matter in the sense of driving revenue, driving growth, and it kind of is a double whammy, if you will.
Makes complete and total sense to me, and I think when the business owner is the business, it's easy to ride by the seat of your pants. But when you start bringing people on as team members, which is really how you grow, because you can't grow one person very well, when you start bringing those people in to have clear paths of this is how we want it done, this is how you handle a complaint, this is how you deliver a product or service or however, but until you have those in, and then, I think you're just going to be stuck in that terrible spot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The more people you bring in, the more process there are,
The more
and
problems you have.
yeah, how many problems you have 100%, and how many different people are to blame without knowing really who's to blame, right? Like
Yeah.
that's another big part of that. And the real trick of it is the operation systems are so important. Getting those down, nail them down, making sure things are streamlined, efficient, effective, all of those buzzwords. And then the secret comes in like, how do we not get stuck in that though? How do
Ah,
we create mechanisms that we are constantly, looking at our processes, looking at procedures, and is this the best way? Otherwise, you just kind of grow into a micromanagement type situation where everyone has a to-do task list and that's all they're doing. Like they're staying within a certain box. And so the
mm.
curiosity really comes into play of yes, be curious about your operations, about how to set that up and make it streamlined and effective. But how do we create a culture? How do we create an environment to where people are constantly on the lookout for, is this still the best way? Is there a better
Mm.
solution? Is there something new we should be doing to get the end results?
I love that. And I think, we all should have that curiosity in our way. But how do we get our team to think that way? Because, they're used to coming in, they get a paycheck, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, right? How do you get them to think for themselves?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a major shift that's happening in the workplace naturally. And I think that's actually something a lot of people can complain about at times where the younger generation coming in and they want to do what they like to do. They want more of an impact. They want to speak up more. And so there's can be this dichotomy at times, I think, with in the workforce because we no longer work in organizations where we're on a factory line doing one thing 300 times a day. We
Right.
all have insights into the various aspects of organization and what's working well, what's not working well. Accounting has a view into marketing. marketing and sales have a view into accounting and what's working because they're on the client side, right? So everyone has a different perspective. And truly, in my book, I talk about something that came out of Google. Google did a something called Project Aristotle, where they're doing a study on what determined whether or not teams were successful within Google.
Mm.
Their hypotheses of this and that, but what they came down to was psychological safety.
Oh.
And the notion of that is, are you building an environment, the leadership building an environment that allows for the regular feedback and pushback and ideas to flow naturally, as opposed to this environment where, stay in your lane, that's not your wheelhouse, that's above your pay grade, all those things that we traditionally used to hear when people would speak up and speak out, but creating an environment that truly allows people to feel free to do that. So this is actually something that has to start from the top. You got to create an environment where people feel comfortable to express ideas and thoughts, and that's the best way to move things forward.
I like that too, because there's so much innovation in society, in business, in technology, in the generational pull
Mm.
of the workforce today. It's a shame that the leadership can't open themselves up and get out of it's my way or the highway kind of mentality into, well, if you've got a problem, and someone else brought this up that I just really loved, that said, when managing your team, right? If you've got a problem, don't come to me with the problem, come to me with the solution you think would work on it, and then we'll work together and fine tune that and take that forward. Because then that gives them the initiative to just say, well, the light's not working, rather than going, hey, I think we can use these new light bulbs. And if we do that, it's going to save us some efficiency and we won't have to change them so often, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I once worked for an organization that saw themselves as innovative, cutting edge, new to the industry. Uh, Big things were going to happen with this organization, and two of the smartest people I've ever met in my life were running this organization, and they thought they created this environment to where people were just going to be flooded with innovation, but it also was a very cut edge type thing.
Mm.
Um, um, you went to work every day not knowing if it was going to be your last. And that
Oh
was
no.
it was one
That
of those
kind of cutting
environments.
edge.
Yeah. Sorry, not cutting edge in technology, but cutthroat, type environment. Um, and in by demanding perfection, by not suffering through people's questions and not knowing all the answers, what it ended up doing was creating this environment where people learned that to keep your job, the best thing was to do was to keep your head down,
Say
do
yes,
as
sir.
do as little as possible, don't stick your nose out too much, and that was a way to keep your job. And so even though they thought they were creating this tough, intelligent, innovative workforce, it ended up being the opposite because it didn't create that environment where people could ask questions, people could question things, people could, learn and grow together and even fail. Failure
Mm.
is a big part of that. Allowing failure, allowing people to learn through failure is a big part of creating that environment as well.
And I think that all starts obviously with the leadership, but I think when the leadership is setting up their culture, right? Because this is really what we're talking about. It leads to results of growth and operations and customer experience, all that kind of stuff. But it starts with this kind of culture of, I'm going to give you a task to do. I'm going to give you some suggestions on how we've done it in the past, but I want you to come out and really make this your own so that it achieves the goal and not following step 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're achieving the goal the best way you can. And I think that culture, that kind of culture where you're encouraging and you're giving the opportunity, as you said, to think it through on your own, and as long as the results are there and it's effective and efficient for the company and there's direction, I think that really it encourages that kind of thought, that curiosity.
Yeah, and there's a way to start kind of that mentality from the very beginning. When we think back to when there's someone new in our organization and there's a staff meeting, department meeting, and the person leading the meeting asks for suggestions, feedback, etc. And the new person raises their hand. Everyone grumbles, right? Like, you've been here
You
for
don't know
two
what you're
weeks.
talking
What do you
about.
know? Wait your turn. But that's the one person in the organization who is not bogged down by the habits, the traditions, everything that stops people from truly speaking out and having a creative, fresh idea on ways to look at things. And so, start making a habit to talk to the new person. I mean, talk to everyone, get to know everyone and what makes them tick, and learn them, and how they're enjoying their job and where they believe there could be some feedback. But the notion of tapping into the new person, which is really, I think, is foreign to a lot of companies, is a great way to start changing that mentality, and for the leaders to talk about that. Like, I want to talk to everyone on staff. I want to talk to the new people. I want everyone's thoughts and views. So just being boisterous about that, expressing that in meetings, and living that little by little, and that will help
Mm.
help start creating that culture.
I like it. It's kind of that, the kids that have no filter, that just come out and go, yeah, we're gonna be, let's go put on capes and run around, I mean, there's that kind of energy I think that you could bring in, which would lift the old timers, right? Not, that would give them that fresh new thing without feeling threatened or challenged by any means. I think that this curiosity idea of going, how can I, how could I make this better, right? And giving them the power to think and act is a beautiful concept. Are your podcast guest appearances leading to real business, or are you just hoping that listeners will take action? With the Profit Booster Podcast Monetization Hub, we turn your interviews into lead generating machines so that you capture, nurture, and convert listeners into paying clients. So stop leaving money on the table and get started today at profitboosterpod.com.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about innovation, growth, and change, right? If you want to continue innovate, grow, and change, you have to be constantly questioning what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it that way. And obviously, curiosity is kind of, the term I've tapped into, but you can use any term you want, right? As long as it's about, creating that environment, creating that atmosphere where people are able to do that. I mean, even companies like Google and 3M have these policies for innovation that allow their team to spend, 120%, 115% on something outside of their job. I mean, these
Mm,
are, like they build that into their culture, which is why we have Gmail, which is why we have post-it notes. These actually came out of this 15 and 20% times where people were working on things outside of their jobs, and became two of the biggest products for both of those companies. So it just shows
interesting.
you that, like we don't have time for that. That will get in the way if we ask people being creative and exploring new opportunities. But truly, if you allow that, tap into that, people are going to make their jobs better, make everything the organization does better, and bring that creativity and curiosity to how can the organization grow.
Well, I love that thought because, I'm always looking at how can I make the company more profitable, right? So one of the aspects of making your company more profitable is reviewing what you're currently doing, whether it's the financial statement and looking at what's coming in and what's going out, which are some basic things, or it's looking at the operations and the innovations of that to be able to say, hey, could you do this with one person instead of two? Could you do this in 1 hour instead of two? Could this mean more client engagement and repeat business? So thinking like that, how can we improve? And I think that's probably the biggest word is how can we improve what we're doing? And if you're curious about it, then you're going to find ways to improve, even if it's improving the the lunch times that we all work or I mean, there's 1,000 million different directions we can go on this kind of idea if we just sit back and go, you know even rewarding improving ideas, right? Oh, you get the employee of the month and an extra Friday off because you came up with this fantastic tool that saved us money.
Yeah, 100%. I have an exercise I do a lot of times for culture workshops where I have the team, client some problem they're trying to solve, right? Like more engagement, more sales, whatever it may be. And I'm like, okay, we're going to solve this problem by only asking questions. Too many
Mm,
times we're stuck on finding the right answer. But if you can't find the right questions, if you can't asking the right questions helps you get down to the root cause of the problems. And here's a good example of that. I'm working with an organization that I've worked with for a number of years, and I was not aware of this, but they were tired of their payroll company and wanted to make a change. And didn't like the customer service, didn't like the cost, whatever. And they had someone who isn't experienced in doing this process. I've done it, 40 times in my career, but this person wasn't very well versed in that. And so I offered my help once I already knew, once it was brought to me that they're making this change. I said, hey, look, I got a few concerns here about some things I'm seeing on their website, et cetera. Do you want to have a conversation about that before we commit to this? She goes, oh, we've already signed the paperwork. Now, myself and her, both who make six figures, are doing administrative tasks 4 to 5 hours a week to solve the problems of lack of integration in this payroll system to save $1,000, $2,000 a month from the other payroll company. But now both of us are spending a significant amount of time. The employees are getting frustrated because things aren't flowing properly between their payroll and their 401k and their benefits because the system is too cheap to do that correctly. But
mm.
and she just didn't know the right questions to ask, right? And that's kind of really my point is, I mean,
Right. It can really spiral down if you're not asking the right questions up front. If you don't know what you don't know, then how can you attempt to say, oh, here could be some problems down the road?
right. Whereas I know when I'm looking at a payroll system, looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of it, does a system work together?
Yeah.
Can you set up payroll to be automatic if we're all salary? Does it automatically and naturally sync with your benefits? So you're not doing
Mm,
reconciliations in the month. You're not, okay, this person upgraded their 401k contribution from 4% to 5%. Do I have to take that into the 401k system and update that? And that's what we're running into. Because
mm.
it wasn't the question known to ask, do these fully integrate on their own without manual steps and people doing that? And that's the part that was missed.
Interesting, interesting. There's so many opportunities, whether it's your sales process or your client journey or your accounting and payroll system, that if you can just ask the right question, you can ask more questions. So tell me more. Well, where could we go with that? Or how could, you have to kind of start forecasting what you think, or even repeating back the question, did I get that right? Right? And having that general curiosity in the way that you question, I think solves a lot of the problems, like you said.
Yeah, my career, being an operations professional, I got to know a decent amount about everything to some regard, right? Like I
Sure.
can't know everything about everything, but I have to have.
You have to know enough to ask the right questions.
Right, right. You gotta have enough to ask questions. And one of the greatest tools that I learned to utilize early on in my career is, when I'm vetting vendors, right? We're hiring a new payroll company, new accounting firm, whatever it may be. I use the knowledge that I get from one against the other. Like
Mm,
we're always so lack transparency in what they're receiving from various vendors. I use it. I'm like, the company over here said that they're a better solution because they do A, B, and C. I see you do A, B, and C. How come? And they say, oh, that's because we do X, Y, and Z. So I go back to A, B, and C company and say, hey, look, I was talking to this other firm. They do X, Y, and Z and say it's better than A, B, and C. How come? And do that with all of them, right? Like ask the questions, be willing to be dumb is a part of it, right? Pretend you don't know, or at least you'll be willing to not know, so you can
right.
ask questions and get the most information, so that you can bring it all back together and make the most educated decision.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's talk about things that maybe you want to avoid. Because you could ask too many questions, or you could go one way, or I mean, are there any kind of things that we might want to avoid when asking so many questions?
Sure. One I will quote the great Taoist philosopher Ted Lasso. Uh, uh, Be curious, not judgmental. I actually think Walt Whitman said it first, but I know it from Ted Lasso. That's a key part of it too. Is like there comes a point where questions can become for the sake of questioning. It can turn into making people feel like they're dumb if you're
Oh.
drilling into them versus curiosity, right? There's ways to make curiosity and make questioning very accusatory, and there's other ways to make it very embracing, right? Embracing of solving the problems and finding the solutions. So that's the key one. Making sure that you're coming into it with the right attitude, the right atmosphere, and you've done that. You've done that background culture work of getting to know your staff and talking
Mm.
about how we're going to create this culture, so it doesn't come across as,
An
oh,
attack.
yeah, it
I'm
doesn't.
attacking the way you're doing things right now because I'm asking you questions rather than going, "Hey, let's look at this. Is there a way we can improve this?" Right? Or maybe, yeah, I think that's or what's the I can't remember what they call it, like the setup question before the question, right? Here, this is why I'm asking this. Is it so I can get some clarity and see if there's an opportunity to improve this process and make your day less headache, right? So have you thought of doing this or did you try this?
And listen, like keep your ears open while doing it. I was hired on as a COO in a change management role for an organization that had seen 3 years in the red. They just dropped half their staff and
Mm.
it to like really kind of rebuild every department, and that's what I was hired to do. And so I kind of again brought this culture of like, look, we're going to change things. Like I want ideas, I
Yes.
want fresh ideas, but the staff was a younger staff, and they often couldn't get past the thought of, I'm doing what I was supposed to be doing. So why are you saying it's wrong? So I actually had to move away from the term change
Mm.
because they were doing,
Change has a fearful
yeah,
feeling to it because
right,
it's like, it's gonna take me longer, harder.
yeah. And so I had to shift the narrative, right? Again, I didn't change what I was doing, but I listened and because they were correct. They were doing exactly what they'd been told to do for years,
But what
which
they've
is
been told was wrong.
correct. So I changed the term to redirection.
Ah,
We're going to redirect our efforts in going this direction. So we're not changing because you did something wrong. We're redirecting because we realize that what you're being told to do is not driving the results that we want.
right. Is there a better way? And we're looking for that better way. I love it. I love it. It's so valuable when we're talking about these kind of things because in today's business environment, to quote my boyfriend Chad GPT, he always starts things off in today's, robust environment. It's like there's so much going on. And competition, there's so much competition. Barriers to entry is limited. There's so much opportunity. And if you're going to stay ahead of the game, business owners, you have to innovate everything you're doing from cost management to operational to client experience and pricing structures and everything that you do. And the only way I believe, and it sounds like you're a firm believer of this too, to improve that, not change, but to improve that, you have to ask questions. How could we do this better? Faster, stronger, cheaper, more efficiently, have a better experience with it. And if you can do that, I think that's the game changer in business to stay up there because there's so many choices the consumer has. And if you're not there, changing, innovating, making it bigger, better, faster, stronger, cheaper, more of what they want, then they're going to choose the other guy that is.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon's a great example of a company that didn't just kind of change the business model, but then changed how it executed, right? We've all seen the videos of the robotic warehouses and are just blown away by how it can do that. But then you also look at organizations that just didn't survive at all because they're unwilling to change. I mean, we know Blockbuster and Kodak as household names that no one ever thought would go away. That was my childhood to some degree, right?
Right.
If I ask my 10-year-old son, if he wants to go to Blockbuster, he'd be like, what?
What? Huh?
They don't even know the term. It's been so far removed because they both failed to make that digital transition. It wasn't even just their operation, but they lost the growth mindset to be able to foresee that change was a coming and didn't adapt to that.
Evolution, evolution, and we've got to continue to evolve and improve. I mean, I look at my own business model, right? I started it back in 2017 when I left the financial services. I started in one form and it's evolved and shifted and moved and it's going. And even in today, 2025, it's shifting again to meet the needs of the consumer, but also to improve my processes and operations. So it's like it's really interesting. I enjoy it. It's not scary to me, but I know there's a lot of folks and people that are like, oh, remember when AI came out and started writing things, all the copywriters and movie writers thought, oh, we're going to be out of a job. Nah, let's let's work with it instead of against it.
Right.
You
How do I
know,
speed
it's
up my process? How do I speed up so I can be more efficient, so I can lower the cost with each client? So now I can work with 5 clients in the same time of one before. And I'm in the same boat as you. Like I started my company in 2018. I'm kind of in my third iteration. I really wanted to figure out how I could take my secret sauce of what I do to help organizations be more efficient and effective, and how can I create a business that does it in a shorter period of time so I can help more businesses to have a more of an impact, but also be able to scale beyond myself. And so I'm in the same boat. I'm in a transition right now, and really excited about the next few months of what's going to come.
I love it. I love it. So I understand you wrote a fantastic book, and which is the foundation of what we're doing here. So tell us a little bit more about your book.
Sure. It's called The Curious Leader, Unlocking Innovation, Empowering Teams, and Driving Change. It goes through, I believe there's 3 shifts that you have to make to become a curious leader, which is mindset, shifting to a growth mindset, shifting
Mm.
to operational excellence, which I define as an organization's ability to achieve its intended results as quickly and effectively as possible. And then also, as I say, unless you're the lead singer of a one-person band, you got to bring your team along with you, which is where the curious culture comes into play. And so I really kind of dive into each of those. I bring in case studies from my career. I bring in case studies, from Amazon and Apple, all the big names that we know, and really have a great mixture of storytelling from both kind of my small business productive or perception, as well as the big Fortune 500 companies. So it really was a great book to write. There was going to be more of that come, but this was a great first book, and I'm very proud of it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so where can listeners find out more about that book? And I understand you've got an opportunity for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to reach out to us very quickly and easily, you can text the word chapter to 33777, and we will send you a PDF version of the first chapter of the book. Also, you can always go to my website, jonbassford.com, and engage with us there. But the quickest, easiest way to get at least a small piece of the book so far is to text 33777, text the word chapter to 33777.
And texting is so darn easy these days. Why not? You got your phone in your hand already. Just check it out. And I think that we've said it throughout the podcast, right? If you're not innovating, you're dying, right? You've got to grow. And if you're not growing, you're being, taken over by your competition or inflation. And so what better way to look at it is through the mindset and the culture of your team to help you to innovate and grow rather than trying to carry all the weight on your own shoulders and try and pull the boulder and the anchor and the whole ship up the hill all by yourself when you've got a lot of bright minds that love to put input and provide input and value to your company. I mean, just seems like a no-brainer for me.
I haven't talked about it because it's not released yet, but I did just shoot a TEDx talk a couple weeks ago as well. And that topic is actually on what you just talked about, which is what I call the DIY dilemma. The notion, whether in life or leadership or in business, this notion that we tend to suffer through things on our own, even when doing so is less productive. We do it because of ego, cultural conditioning, fear of burdening others, and lack of resources. And so that's actually what my TEDx talk is about, the DIY dilemma, and how curiosity is the cure to that.
I love that. That is so valuable because we do, right? Especially in the leadership role. Oh, well, it's easier for me to just do it myself rather than explain it to you, break it down, have to go back and knowing that you're only going to get, you're only going to be 75% of what I could do. And then I'm going to have to fix the rest, right? Which is the worst thing we can do. Someone said 80% of done is better than 100% of me doing it myself.
100%.
I love it. I love it. It's great. All right. Wow, listeners, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you picked up some valuable insight and actionable ideas that will help your business be more profitable. And I know if you take this curiosity theme and you can bring it into the culture of your company, your operations are going to improve, your profitability is going to improve, your customer engagement experience and just the whole flow of the company is going to improve if you can have that kind of curiosity in your company. So I hope you take this to heart and go download Jon's chapter of his book, and even just go get the book and learn how to bring that excitement, that childhood curiosity back into your business. All right, as I mentioned before, it might be time for a new perspective. And that's why we're offering a free growth and marketing audit. And in just one session, we'll uncover opportunities that could drive real growth for your business. So if you're ready to make an impact, go visit profitbooster.biz and get started. And don't forget to subscribe to today's show. You don't want to miss future shows. You can always find Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast players. And we're looking forward to more great profitable information on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thanks so much, Jon. This was fun.
You're having me.